Hey, it's your Aaron, and I just wanted to have a bit of a rant. And I don't have a lot of space on my phone, so it should be short. But I've seen a lot of people sharing this chart around on Facebook where gender is like split into a grid, and there's like male at one corner, female at another, agender at diagonal from those, and non-binary or genderqueer at the other, and it's a really bad chart. I don't think anyone should be sharing it because it's just completely not how gender works. Um, for example, you could have multiple genders, or your gender could be fluid, you could change. So how is that chart representing you if you're both fully male sometimes and fully female at other times, or multi-gender, fully both, or you could be, for example, fully non-binary and also exclusively a man, or fully non-binary and exclusively a woman, because binary means there's only two options. So literally, as soon as you admit that there's more than two options, none of the options can be called binary. Because when you call an option binary, you're also calling that space of options to only have two options. Binary means one of two. That's what binary means. So if you say, but non-binary and being an exclusively a man or exclusively a woman are different, you're calling being exclusive man or exclusively a woman binary, but then that means you saying that you can only be exclusively a man or exclusively a woman. It does make sense. You don't understand what binary means, you don't understand how gender works, or both, if you're calling gender binary. But you can be fully non binary and fully a woman and exclusively a woman. And this chart's putting them at different corners as if you can't fully be both. Now, if you did want to visually represent gender in a chart, it would need to be infinite because every single person's gender is unique. So there's always going to be some amount of your gender that doesn't overlap with anyone else's. And someone else might relate to a little bit of everyone else's gender on Earth. They might just be able to relate to that and identify with some part of everyone else's gender, but someone else might not identify with any part of anyone else's. It might be completely their own custom gender identity that isn't relatable to anyone else on Earth. And those are both fully valid. Just because um, identifying as a man or a woman is popular doesn't mean that they are somehow more valid. So your charts can't have man and woman as being somehow more important than other genders, like gender based on something inorganic or fantasy only. Those are still just as valid as identifying as a man or woman. Just because they're not popular doesn't mean they're less valid and less worthy of their own, you know, corner in a graph or whatever. And so your graph is going to have infinite amounts of equally valid points to it. And that's not really something you can do in a chart. The closest I think we can come to is fractals, because in a fractal, all that's changing is your zoom level, but every point in the fractal is mathematically valid. And you could say be by changing your focus, you can change, you know, it would have to be a 3D fractal and it would have to have more than three dimensions, but at least, a 3D or 2D fractal is closer than anything else. But either way, it's still hyperdimensional, and it's something that we should not try to reduce down and then only have male and female as still being prominent, because anytime you have that kind of dualistic bias, it ends up reinforcing a biology to gender mapping, which is unscientific. And we shouldn't be doing that. If we're trying to represent gender, we shouldn't be maintaining those biases in our new model. So that's why I came up with a model called genre gender, where it's basically saying gender is like a genre, which, if you look at the um, history of the word gender, it actually originates from the word genre. So I think it's pretty fitting. And basically, the reason why genre is a better conception is because something can be any amount of genres. You could have, or you could call it genreless, but you could say, I'm making a song that is ska hip hop or, you know, rock jazz or whatever combination you want. And also the artistic impression, if you are saying that your music is X genre, even if other people don't think it's that genre, you still get to call it that genre because it's your interpretation of that genre. And while people might not agree with your labeling, that still gets to be what's put on your Wikipedia or whatever, if that's how you self identify genre wise as a musician. So why can't we do it differently for gender? We have the capacity to understand it in when it comes to music, and that kind of thing. So we have the capacity to do it for gender too. People are just not able to because they continue to try and map it back to biology, and then it doesn't make sense. And that they're trying to resolve a cognitive dissonance of not wanting to let go the gender to biology link. And it's important that we do that. While it's true that many people who are transgender do want to have physical changes to their body, you can almost think of it as two separate co-occurring experiences, one of being a different gender and one of wanting to change your body. And you might want to change your body for just personal and individual reasons that have nothing to do with society, that you would have done, even if you were, assigned the correct gender. Would gender only develops with your personality later in life, but anyway, it can't be assigned. But anyway, you could, in theory, be assigned the right gender and still want to change your body, or you could want to change your body because that's what was gatekept. So maybe as a child, you physical things were gatekept, used to gatekeep you away from certain gender experiences, and so you might want to change your body as an act of defiance against that gatekeeping. Even if you have access to those things without transitioning, you still might want to. But anyway, the point is that it's often experienced together because it's treated as something that's together, but it's not necessarily something that's the same. And so we do need to separate biology and gender. And if you want to change your biology and it's coinciding with a change in gender identity, that's perfectly valid and normal and pretty common, but it's not because it's the same thing. Um, and that's why we can't have dualistic or male and female prominent conceptions or models of gender, and because that's just catering to tradition and inertia. It's just trying to prop those two genders up because they're popular, and not because there's any actual reason, or it's not more normal. It's just more like traditional, or like it's group wanting to fit into certain groups, but it's got nothing to do with the validity of someone individually wanting to express that. And we need to give people agency to choose whatever they want, which means we can't treat certain genders as weird. We can't treat certain genders as less like normal just because they're less popular or whatever. That's just not cool. Like you don't say, oh, that's not a real genre just because there's only a couple artists doing it. Well, you might, but then you're an asshole, and you're being an asshole too when you try to make male and female or man and woman or whatever be more prominent than people who are like otherkin or whatever. Just embrace people's uniqueness and let them identify as they want without some kind of established norms that they're supposed to fit into. And in your charts, don't put male and female as prominent, and don't separate. If you're demi-gender or whatever, you might be agender and exclusively a man, for example, or exclusively a woman, or also non-binary. And you should, theoretically, you can only be non-binary, but you could be non-binary and exclusively a man, or non-binary and exclusively a woman. Scientifically speaking, you can't be binary. You might identify as it, but not an accurate description of gender, because gender can't be binary, because binary means there's only two options, and it's impossible for something developed unique to each person with infinite complexity to ever be reduced down to two options. And not even sex is two options, even though there's two common trends. It's still a spectrum, and each point in that spectrum is also valid. But in gender, that trend is completely artificial, and we should stop propping it up in our conceptions of gender. Anyway, I lost my computer, I was robbed, so I'm not gonna be doing editing and crap, but I might still do these rant videos or whatever. You can hit up my Patreon if you want to help me out, because I've lost income from COVID and struggling to find a job and basically surviving off donations anyway. But yeah, you can hit up my Patreon if you care about trying to help me out. Otherwise, you can enjoy my rants or not. It's up to you. Anyway, thanks for listening and watching and whatever. Bye.